Welcome back to With the First Pick in this edition of The Perfect Fix. We got to fix the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ooh, boy. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Rand Carthon. Before we get going here, Steelers fans, let us know in the comments. I'm guessing you guys wanted to move on from Mike Tomlin, and you got what you asked for, and I get it. It felt like after watching 19 years of Mike Tomlin, and I'll be interested in your thoughts, Rand, it felt like the last 6-7 weeks when you just saw pictures of him on the sidelines, he was thinking about taking a break. He looked run down, and that's not something you usually say about Mike T. But either way, fans, you got what you want. Where do they go from here? I'm curious what you guys think about that. We're going to talk about all of that and what it means right now. All right, Rand. Mike T stepped down, been there 19 years. My very first training camp covering the Steelers was in 2006, the last year of Bill Cowher. My next year I went there, and Mike Tomlin's first year. So, I mean, it's crazy, number one, how old I am and how quickly time flies. But, fresh-faced and ready to get after it, and here we are 19 seasons later, the blowout loss to the Houston Texans, and the next day Tomlin steps down. Okay, what is plan B if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because let's take a look at some of the confirmed interview candidates. Anthony Weaver, the DC in Miami. He was previously in Baltimore. Clay Kubiak, who we've talked a ton about, the 49ers offensive coordinator. His brother is Clint, who was the Seattle offensive coordinator, still playing. Jesse Mentor, the Chargers DC. Edro Evero, the Panthers DC. Chris Shula, Rams DC. Nate Skeelhouse, who is pretty young, pass game coordinator for the Rams. Jeff Hafley was also interviewed, but he has just taken the job in Miami. And Mike McCarthy's on this list, as is Brian Flores, who worked there previously in Pittsburgh before going to Minnesota to be the DC there. So what do you got? What do you think here?
Well, first of all, I'm just looking at this list here, and you look at Mike McDaniel, Raheem Morris, Robert Saleh, Jeff Hafley. All those guys have been with Kyle Shanahan in some form or fashion. Jeff Hafley was our secondary coach at the 49ers that first year when Robert Saleh was the D coordinator, who also was on that staff was D'Amico Ryans. So there's been a lot of coaches that have come. It just caught my eye when you said that. But you listed all the guys that have been confirmed. It's been reported that Anthony Weaver will have a second interview coming up. Brian Flores is in person today, I believe. And at some point, Mike McCarthy is going to be brought in for an in-person interview. Now, let's just – it's our job to give the people the information, right? And you could decipher with it whatever you want, however you want, chop it up, whatever the case may be. But let's just give – I want to give you guys a little bit of the rule. I know you guys know it, Pittsburgh fans. I'm not – not talking at you, but I'm just working you through the scenario here. So a part of the way the interview process, most people do all their initial interviews virtual, and then you whittle down the list. And once you whittle down the list, you bring a couple guys in person. Now, because of the Rooney Rule, you have to bring in 2 quote unquote minority candidates from outside of your building to interview in person before you can make a hire, right? So Brian Flores checks that box because he's in today. He's coming from the Vikings. And then if it's true, Anthony Weaver will be in at some point this week. Then after those 2, if it's not one of those 2, then they're free to hire whenever they're ready, right? So we always, when you're working, as teams are working through these interview processes, whether it's for a GM spot, whether it's for a head coaching spot, always understand and look at it from the standpoint of when and how these teams structure these in-person interviews, right? That'll typically lead you to let you know when the process is coming to a close. Now, like I mentioned Mike McCarthy, and I just want to bring Mike McCarthy up as a guy that has ties to GM Omar Khan. They were together in New Orleans back in the day when they both were starting out. So I know that there are some ties there. I do think some of these other guys are legitimate candidates, but we're talking about a franchise and an organization that is on its 4th coach since 1969. I did think that they would run a little bit more of an exhaustive process because they don't necessarily know any of these candidates because they haven't had to hire a coach for the last 19 years. If you look at their GM search, when they hired Omar Khan, they interviewed a litany of guys, including myself, for that job because Art Rooney just didn't know the pool. He didn't know who was available to him and hadn't had any experiences with those guys. So I thought that they would run a little bit more of an exhaustive process. But then again, with as many jobs that are open, you don't have that type of time. And so you gotta work through and if you're when you're hiring, and I've been having this conversation with people in terms of, man, you can't hire your friends. Well, if you're going into one of the biggest jobs of your life, right, and your livelihood is dependent on it, you will want to work with someone that you know and trust, right, that you feel that you have alignment with, and you don't want to try to create this shotgun type of marriage because they
Right.
never work, particularly in this league. And we've talked about, the ego part of it, and even along with the ego, the insecurity part of who gets control, who wants power, who's reporting to who, and all those things factor in, right, when you're doing this. And so, for me, I would say, if I'm choosing, I think it will come down to Brian Flores and Mike McCarthy.
Hey,
Will
let
be
me stop you there. So Mike McCarthy is 62. He is a Western PA guy, so he has those ties. He has the ties to Omar from their time together in New Orleans, but he's 62. Didn't coach last year. And they like to have guys coach for a while. They're incredibly patient. That's one of the highlights of getting the Steelers job, in addition to being in Pittsburgh. So that's my question. Not that he can't do it. He had success in Dallas. They couldn't win playoff games, which is their issue here. But let me ask you this. I don't know how well you know Mike, but does the age give you pause given the Steelers' track record? And if it's down to those two guys, and I'm okay with either, being honest with you, who do you think? Do they need another leader, man, like Mike Tomlin, or do they need someone who can just coach the crap out of these guys and get the most out of them?
Well, I mean, I don't think the age factors in,
Okay.
right? 62 years old in the NFL. It's kind of young. Yeah, when you think about it in the
That
grand
makes me
scheme
feel
of things.
good, by the way.
Well, you're still old, so we'll leave it at that. But I mean, you look at the age of Pete Carroll. How old is Andy Reid? And he's still coaching at a very high level, and so I don't think that age will factor in. Now, if with Brian Flores, he's been there, so that gives him a leg up. He's been in the building; they know him, because I know there are going to be some questions about Brian Flores and everything that's come with Brian Flores. And so, for me, the big thing for Brian Flores is what type of staff is he going to be able to bring? What type of offensive staff is he going to be able to build? And then from there, I mean, they obviously, and we'll get to this, but they have a ton of needs on both sides of the ball that they have to fix. And we know that Brian Flores is his thing is defense, and he'll get that defense right, no matter what. But on the flip side, Mike McCarthy knows offense, and he'll get the offense right, and they'll be productive, as we saw in Dallas and as we saw in Green Bay. And so that's what's going to come down to it for them, is what's most important. Just in terms of, are you going to accentuate what you do well and just continue to build the other piece of it? So we'll see. But I think no matter what, it's going to come down to Brian Flores and Mike McCarthy. And I could be totally wrong by the time this comes out and they make their decision. But I think both of those guys have familiarity with not only the GM, but just the Steeler way and what that means.
Steelers fans, let us know in the comments who you're eyeballing, who you think best fixes. Like, I know Mike McCarthy isn't an inspiring hire if you're looking to get fresh-faced and new ideas, but he also has a track record of success. And he probably dealt with a little more in Dallas than he wanted to. You feel like that would not be an issue in Pittsburgh, where the ownership on the outside looking in feels pretty hands off. Let me ask you this, Rand. I don't know if you got this sense just doing your research when you interviewed with him, or just being who you are. The knock on Pittsburgh is that they're not into analytics as much as other teams. They don't have the facilities aren't at A+ like other teams are. There's some concerns about that. The scouting staff maybe isn't as big as other teams. Number one, is that close to the truth? And number two, is that hampering them? And was that something that maybe Mike T was covering up?
Well, here's the thing. I don't when we talk about the analytics piece, right? I feel like we overstate the importance of the analytics piece, because there's a lot of nuance that goes on in the game of football that can be and should be deemed analytics, but it's not for some reason. Just in terms of the amount of work these coaches put into breaking down opponents and tendencies, and all that stuff is analytics.
Right.
All of that stuff is data driven. But we've never put that connotation on it. It's just always been a part of doing your job. And so to say that they don't embrace analytics, I can't say that they do or they don't. I'm pretty sure that they were behind the 8 ball, coming in, because their previous GM had been there for 20 plus years, Kevin Colbert, and that's just not the way he came up. Now, I know Kevin was an evolving type of GM, but he kind of stood on what he stood on, and it worked for him. And so I'm sure Omar, because he's a little bit younger, a little bit more forward thinking, he will try to incorporate more than that. But that's not something that you just turn around overnight and you build a robust analytics department and you go from 2 people to 15 people all of a sudden. So that's just something that takes time. It takes capital. And you mentioned the facility. You share a facility with the Pittsburgh Panthers, the University of Pittsburgh. So there's only so much space that you have to be able to, build the infrastructure of your building and your organization. So again, this isn't college football. You don't have to wow players with the facility, right? Because even in free agency, there was a time where free agency opened, and then guys will go on visits to the organization, sit down with the coaches and the GM and the powers that be, and then make their decision if they want to play there. Well, now you have the 3-day tampering window where you can talk to guys, and guys just go to the highest bidder. Where's the money?
Right.
All right, you're going to pay me. They sign, they agree to sign, they come in, they sign. And when they come in to sign, that's their first time seeing the building. Well, guess what? Ink's on the paper. You're here. And guess what? If our training room is a broom closet, then you're going to be getting treatment in that broom closet. And so that's just what it is.
Well, as long as the check's clear, I would imagine you can get over the broom closet weight room.
Hey, man. Hello, somebody. Yes.
I looked this up real quick, which I thought was interesting. So Tomlin was hired in 2007 in, I think, early February. So it was a little later than as we currently sit here. But these were some of the candidates they were looking at. Ken Wisenhunt, who was the OC at the time, that Steelers team that went to the Super Bowl. Russ Grimm, everyone and their brother thought that he was going to get the job. He ended up going to Arizona after he didn't get the job. Mike T, of course. Ron Rivera, Bears DC at the time, was mentioned. And Bill Cowher had recommended, according to reports, Shan Gailey, who was another offensive guy. So it just goes to show you, man, 20 years later, how things change and just guys come and go, and it's a wild time. All right. Like we always do, Rand, let's lean on your front office experience here and continue to look at the free agency situation. The Steelers here's some good news. Number 9 in available salary cap space. As always, you can check my work, Rand. I have them at $46.6 million available cap space. High five on that one. That, again, like more good news. So here are the free agents to be. And as a Steelers fan, I'll give you some recommendations, and you can tell me which one of these guys we should bring back and which one of these guys we need to let walk. Aaron Rodgers, Kyle Duggar, Isaac Seumalo, the starting offensive guard. Left guard Adam Thielen has retired, but his contract's up. Kenneth Gainwell, Scotty Miller, MVS came in with Aaron Rodgers. Jabril Peppers, James Pierre, played cornerback after everyone and their brother got hurt. They got rid of Darius Slay. The same with Asante Samuel Jr. Got to shout out Corliss Waitman, the punter. And then Calvin Austin III, the number 2/3 receiver, and Connor Hayward, Cam's brother, fullback and tush push extraordinaire. I'm fine moving on from Aaron Rodgers. I get it. It was fun. Let's move on. I thought Kyle Duggar was brought something to that secondary. He's 29 years old. Isaac Seumalo is in his 30s, but I thought he played well. Kenneth Gainwell feels like a guy you have to bring back, given how important he was to that offense. And I'm sure you'll mention that all this depends on who you're going to hire as the coach and the OC. And subsequent to that, James Pierre, I would think about bringing back. I think he'll be cheap, but he added some depth and was able to start. And what do you think about Calvin Austin III, bringing him back as a 5'9", number 2/number 3 with returnability?
Well, I would be fine with him if you brought him back as your third.
Yeah.
Your third or your fourth even. I know the fourth may be stretching it. But to bring, a diminutive receiver back that hadn't really created much separation and made much of an impact in terms of his receiver role back as your number 2 receiver, that costs a different number, right? And so I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers program is going to be in dire straits if they don't re-sign Calvin Austin.
That's a good way to think about it. Like if
You
you're
know?
saying Calvin Austin or Kenneth Gainwell, that's a short conversation.
Yeah, like I'm taking Kenneth Gainwell, and Kenneth Gainwell will be a guy because where you're currently, what's their starting running back's name?
Jalen Warren.
Jalen Warren. You're paying Jalen Warren. I think his cap number for the year is around $7 million. And what you could pay to get Kenneth Gainwell back, you put those two numbers together, and you're still below probably the top 5 to 8 highest paid running backs in the league right now.
Right.
And you're getting a good 2-for-1 combo that you know works. The other guy, I mean, not that you have to re-sign him, but two vets, older vets, Andres Pete and Chuck Clark. You know, those guys played a lot for him as well. But you mentioned 46.6 million in cap space. They do have almost 8 million in dead cap space right now. Two guys that we talked about from a cap casualty / renegotiation standpoint. One would be Cam Hayward. I know Cam Hayward is the end all be all of this defense, and I think he sets the tone. But at his age, he has to figure out if he wants to play another year and what that's going to look like. And he's carrying a cap number of 19.1 million. Maybe they can convert some of that salary number into a signing bonus, add some years on the back end, free up some money. And then the other one for me was Jonnu Smith at almost $11 million cap number. And I know that Jonnu Smith pick had to do with Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith had him at Tennessee, had him in Atlanta, and then brought him with him to Pittsburgh. And so with the new offensive coordinator, whatever it is they want to do, does Jonnu Smith fit?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Let me throw two more names out at you. Because one of the things, and it may end up being more bug than feature, Tomlin winning, perhaps masking some of the shortcomings of this team, also meant you were never in position to draft a quarterback. They won, 6 games when they drafted Big Ben in 2004. They took him 11th overall, and they never picked close to that except in 2020, I think, when they traded up 10 spots to 10 to get Devin Bush. And, you know, in retrospect, maybe that wasn't the right move. But everything else has been Kenny Pickett. It's been Mitch Trubisky. It's been Aaron Rodgers. It's been Mason Rudolph. And maybe you just need to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm not saying tank, but you got to rebuild. I say all that to say this. Would you trade or think about trading Freiermuth, who wasn't used this year for reasons that defy expectation for me? I thought he should have been utilized more. And would you trade TJ Watt? Now, the salary is something you're going to have to figure out. But are those two guys that should be on the table potentially if you're going to try to fix this thing? Because at the end of the day, I don't care how good you are. If you don't have a franchise quarterback, you're going to lose playoff games.
No, I think it's definitely something that should be on the table. I recently listened to our own Lige Douzable talk about trading TJ Watt, and the thought hadn't really crossed my mind. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, is you're trying to build this for long-term stability. And like you said, you have to have a quarterback to have that type of stability. So it's something that you would definitely consider. Now, I will say in this year's draft class, they do have 12 picks. That might be the most of all teams. They have a 1, a 2. They have 3 3s, 2 4s, a 5, 2 6s, and 2 7s. Not saying that that's going to be enough to move from that one at pick 21 to move up higher to take one of these quarterbacks. But what if Ty Simpson is sitting there, depending on how well they like him, or how much they like him? Is 21 a reach for Ty Simpson there at 21?
Hey, can I ask you something?
I'm turning that question to you as our resident Steelers fan. I don't even know why I'm talking. Right in this case,
you're my therapist right now. That's why.
In the greater scheme of things, I should have punted this whole entire segment to you, and you tell me as a resident Steelers fan what you want and what you like to see happen.
I know. I need you, number 1, as a sounding board, number 2, as a therapist, and number 3 for your insights. I looked quickly while you were talking. If you trade TJ Watt post June 1st, dead cap in 2026 is $10 million, and 2027 is $20 million. So it could be worse. Not great, but just to put a pin into that. Now, the other thing with Ty Simpson picking at 21, I think it's when the Steelers select. Yeah, 21 there. Thank you, Stryker. Here's the thing, and I hate saying this because we say it every year, and every year it blows up in our face, but I'm going to say it. Next year's draft class looks pretty good at quarterback. Now, here's what I'm saying. Do you want to roll the dice on someone at 20 or 21, which is where he took Kenny Pickett? Or do you want to get a guy that you love? Now, if you love Ty Simpson at 21, that's fine. But I do wonder if you just get the best available player here, whoever that is, and then the season plays out like the season plays out. And if you have to trade picks to get up to where you want to get to, you have to do it. If you want to do a Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff situation, like both the Rams and the Lions benefited from, you got to do it. But you can't keep drafting guys in the 20 and expecting different results. So you're smirking. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, you can't really bring up the Rams and the Detroit trade because you need a Jared Goff and a Matthew Stafford. And Pittsburgh doesn't have either one of those now.
Brad Holmes knew, but the rest of us, maybe you knew. They didn't know Jared Goff was going to be Jared Goff, though. Is that fair?
No. I think if you look at what Jared was able to accomplish at the Rams, right? Struggled his first year. He was a young guy coming in, just different way of doing things, and most rookies are going to struggle. But then you got him with McVay, and then he started to take off, became a Pro Bowler, and all those things. And then McVay just wanted more. He wanted more out of the position. He's a little bit more demanding of the quarterback, and felt like Jared Goff couldn't give him what he ultimately needed. Now, Brad was a part. We were all there when we drafted Jared Goff together in 2016, and he was the college director. So he really had an intimate knowledge of Jared Goff and all the inner workings of Jared Goff. And so he was comfortable being a part of that trade. Plus, he was kind of backed into a corner. Matthew Stafford did not want to be in Detroit at that point. And so at that point, it was either trade me or I'm going to retire. And so for Brad Holmes, you make that trade because you're getting a quarterback back that you've evaluated, that can play, that you've seen play in the league, versus having to go out and hope and roll the dice and hope you hit your number on one of these draft picks. And so if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, we said it last year. We said that in 2025, oh man, the 2026 draft class is going to be deep at the quarterback position.
I know. I'm gonna fall for it again.
Here. And so you put your and I'm gonna be honest with you, Ryan. Like, you as an evaluator, as a team builder, as a GM, obviously you have one foot in the present with eyes towards the future. Well, guess what? And I'm proof of it. You may not be a part of that future. So you better secure that damn present, you know what I mean? And take the bird in the hand. It's easier to do that and say, well, damn, okay. Well, look, if we're picking high next year, we have a quarterback who, if you took one at 21 and you like him, like, damn. But you guess what you do? You put yourself in position, even if you don't have a strong season. You put yourself in a position where other people are going to want to trade to your pick to get one of those quarterbacks that they covet. And then now you'll be finding yourself with 12 more draft picks again in 2027. So
that's a good point.
You can't be afraid. You got to be. I was recently speaking with a kid who was trying to make his decision on whether to stay in college or leave. And I just simply told him, whatever you do, you have to make the decision that's best for you, and whatever decision come with it. When you're done, you're good with your decision and move forward. And I think that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have to do.
That's an important reminder to stay present, because can't control the future. That includes whether you have a job or not. So that's a good reminder there. All right, so let's stay present. You mentioned they had the 12 draft picks
on the With the First Pick podcast with Ryan Wilson.
Steelers have 12 picks in 2026, including 3 third rounders. So let's go, Omar. Let's play the old game here. I'll give you some names at 21, and you tell me biggest impact in 2026. The aforementioned Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama. He may be in the first round. He may not. We may only have one first-round quarterback. We shall see. Jordan Tyson, wide receiver at ASU. You can tell me if he's too similar to DK, or do you want something different? I don't think you can have enough dudes out there on the outside. I think he is a day 2 pick, but he's getting buzz. Ohio State defensive lineman Caden McDonald, great against the run, has to grow into being a pass rusher. Cornerback Avion Terrell out of Clemson, and then his teammate edge rusher TJ Parker out of Clemson. Any of those guys that you want to to fix things on day one, and that could include Ty, the quarterback, and just sitting him for a year or playing him 8 weeks into the season?
I think Terrell makes a real good choice because he can give you outside, inside versatility from the corner position, and he's tough. He can tackle. He fits that mentality, especially playing in that division where you're going to have to tackle guys and be able to get guys on the ground. Who was the second name you mentioned after you said Ty Simpson?
Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver at Arizona
Yeah,
State.
I don't foresee Jordan Tyson being there at 21, but I think if he's there at 21, you take him.
Okay.
Because that gives you your legitimate starter opposite of DK. DK is more of a vertical stretch the field, catch the ball on the move, use that size, that speed to kind of take it the distance, whereas Jordan Tyson is more of a Z receiver where he can work the middle. He's good running after the catch. He can do all the tough stuff, be sure-handed over the middle. I think it'll give him that. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, I like Ty Simpson. And you did such a great job with your analysis on him in that article, which I challenge all Steelers fans, all people that are listening and watching the show to go back and read Ryan Wilson's article and the breakdown he did on Ty Simpson. That one deal with throwing the ball down the field, especially if you have a DK Metcalf and his lack of efficiency throwing the ball down the field. And you got to think about you're going to be playing outside in Pittsburgh most of your year. You got to go to Cincinnati and play outside, and you got to go to Baltimore and play outside. Like that would give me some pause with a guy that can't really I'm not gonna say he can't push the ball downfield. He hasn't been as accurate pushing the ball down.
And that may be injury related. There's been the rumors coming out of Alabama, but still the tape is what the tape is. The other thing to keep in mind, he's only started 15 games, Rand. Here are the other first-round quarterbacks since 2010 who started 15 games. Mitch Trubisky, Anthony Richardson, Dwayne Haskins, and then Cam Newton. But Cam had played JUCO ball the year before he got to Auburn after he left Florida. And, he led that team to a national title. And as you pointed out several times, Cam did it with a bunch of guys that most folks can't name, including me, that was on that Auburn roster at the time. So he's the exception. I don't think anyone would mistake Ty Simpson for Cam Newton coming out. So that's the other thing you got to be wary of when you're trying to evaluate and figure out where you're going to draft these guys. Steelers fans, let us know, who do you want at quarterback, whether it's someone you got to trade for and it ain't going to cost it's going to cost a lot. It's going to be a pretty penny, or through the draft or the draft pick that you like best to help turn this thing around as quickly as possible. All right, Stryker, let's hear the drop.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs?
All right. Thank you, Jim Mora. And words have never been truer coming out of your mouth here. Age, old roster, lack of a quarterback and a head coach and an OC and a DC. But you do have the stability of being in Pittsburgh. You're not going to get fired tomorrow. You have some much-needed salary cap space and draft space, but you're playing in a division where Joe Burrow's going to be healthy. Lamar's going to be back with a new coach. The Browns are the Browns. So they got to figure out their coaching situation and their quarterback situation. But the point is, this team legitimately, without Mike Tomlin, feels like they have a real chance not to win more games than they lose.
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be the first time we see them in 19 years have a losing season because I think there's going to be a ton of roster turnover on this football team. And again, we don't know the level of coaching and motivation that Mike Tomlin had to do to get this team in position to win the AFC North. Right, because we weren't in there. And so we don't know that the next head coach can come in and galvanize the troops, rally the troops to get them to play to a level that they did to close it out and win those games that they needed to make the playoffs. So I wouldn't hedge my bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers making playoffs next year.
Yeah, I don't think they make the playoffs, and I think they have to do a reset. And you can be an owner and say we don't rebuild, but we all have eyes, and this is where they are. And that's okay. There are worse places to be. Maybe it's a fun story and they exceed expectations, but I think it's okay to rebuild once every 2 decades. All right. One last time, Steelers fans, let us know what you think in terms of the rebuild time frame and your overall. I'm actually curious what your overall feelings are about this organization. You guys, in large part, wanted to move on from Tomlin, so you got your wish. Now what needs to happen to make you happy? Because fan ran is short for fanatic. And I think we see that each and every week in the NFL. All right, that's it for the perfect fix for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thank you, as always, for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Check my coffin because we're going to fix every single NFL team. See you guys in the next one.